1. When I was a senior in high school, I started working as a cashier at a grocery store. While this was not my first job, it was my first one where I was part of a union and learned about some of the pros and cons of unions. Mostly pros like regular raises, breaks, holiday pay, etc. We had a woman there who was basically our human resources person, and we did not get along even from before I worked there. Sally. I came in for my interview and Sally was not there and had left work for the day. I remember apologizing and saying, "I must have mixed up the days. Is there any way you can find out which is the correct day for my interview?" But the manager on duty advised me that I was correct, as they had checked the calendar in her office and she had written it down, and so he, the front-end supervisor, and the other manager, who came in to start his shift, all interviewed and hired me instead. I later heard from the grapevine that she was working 2 locations and really wanted to be hired full-time at a larger store, which would have been a promotion for her, but instead, she was placed full-time at our location only, and didn't get promoted, and that her missing my interview was the final nail in the coffin for her, as this was just one in a long list of mistakes she made. She was always making excuses for why I couldn't be put in or transferred to another department when they were hiring people for those departments like bakery or deli, and kept me as a cashier, even though it was lower pay. Even so, I came back to work there over my winter break for college. I had gone away to college instead of commuting, and also summer break. Here is where my malicious compliance comes in. Our union states that after a waiting period, I believe it was 3 months, we get holiday pay for working Sundays and holidays. It was time and a half. We are also entitled to a raise every 6 months. And being away at college is not supposed to affect that, since we join the union before leaving, and come back on our breaks and still owe our dues during those times when we are still part of the union but away at school. I got my first paycheck stub for the summer and noticed I did not get my holiday for working that Sunday nor my raise. I spoke with a coworker who advised me to speak with the store manager. He was one of the ones that interviewed me and always looked after his staff, since we were union reps at the time. He was a born problem solver and told me right away he can fix the payroll error for me and make sure I got not only the proper wage from now on, but that I would get back for the time I should have gotten the raise but didn't. As far as holiday pay though, that had to be taken care of by Sally since she was in HR, and he suggested we go see if she was free and speak with her. She just spoke to both of us in a condescending tone about how this was union policy, and that I had to start all over again with seniority, and that I had to earn that holiday pay again, by being there for 3 months. He pointed out, as I did, that I was getting this holiday before leaving for college, and even over the winter break that I had worked. But she just kept saying to me, "It's union policy." My manager calmly tried to negotiate with her and get her to correct, and even stated that other employees had not had to go through this. I finally just raised my hand to silence them both. "Okay, so you were saying that I can't get my holiday pay, even though I was before I left to go back to college at the end of January. Due to union policy, correct?" I asked. "Yes," she said with a long, dramatic sigh that was meant to say, "Like I have been telling you." I nodded, grinned, and stated, "But union policy also states that I don't have to work holidays or Sundays, and that I can't be penalized for refusing to do so, correct?" My manager grinned at me like he was very proud of me and saw exactly where this was going. "Well, yes, that is true," Sally said, looking a bit nervous. "Okay, well then, here is a compromise. Since union policy states that I can't get the holiday pay for working Sundays and holidays for the rest of the summer, I will not work any holidays or Sundays, and per union policy, I am allowed to do this," I said with a shrug. She immediately started laying on the charm about how I am such a great worker, and that they really need me to be there to help out with Sundays and holidays. But I pointed out that there were plenty of other employees who were getting the holiday pay that they count on, and I would be glad to return to working holidays and Sundays once I got my holiday for doing so. My manager commented that he and I need to change the schedule, and casually mentioned how this was going to be hard as he now had to take me off for next Sunday and Monday, as that Monday was Memorial Day. and it was a Thursday, but that the store would just have to make it work if they couldn't find anyone willing to come in. Once she had left for the day, he called me upstairs to his office to help me with the schedule, since I had to work so many days each week. I walked in to find him and another manager there grinning ear to ear and telling me how proud they were of me for how I handled the situation. On Memorial Day and the 4th of July, I got a call asking if I can come in because they had other people call out sick who were scheduled. I just calmly explained that I was no longer working Sundays or holidays, and that Sally could explain why. Before the end of the summer, she found a new position and quit, and the new HR person was much nicer. One of the first things she did was make sure I and a few other college students who had similar issues with the holiday got our holiday pay reinstated, and when I requested about a transfer to another department, she gladly asked around and had me put in the Health and Beauty Aids department that same week. 2. Setting. I was working in a top Asian brand factory in the engineering department. One of my main and many tasks was giving support to production with new models, and also training staff when product rework was needed. At this point, I'm a year into my engineering position and am sick of my work environment, as it was hostile in many ways and was common for me to work 65+ hours almost every week. Overtime was paid, this is relevant later. For reference, my work schedule in paper was 5 work days with 10.2 hours each day, including breaks and lunch, but I ended up going most Saturdays and staying late on weekdays also. The story. One Friday morning, my team manager, Jeff, requested me to go home and then return during second shift because there was rework needed on some product, and they needed 2 members from our team during said rework. Jeff's instructions were as follows. Go home, get some sleep, come back at the beginning of second shift. Give rework instructions to staff members, supervise until they finish, and then send me a report with the outcome via email. Stay overtime if needed. Simple enough. I just ask about my morning hours, and he states that the time I have worked that morning would be added to my overtime hours and that I worked second shift as normal hours, from 7:30 p.m. to 4:20 a.m., and to stay longer if necessary to ensure everything was okay, paid overtime also. This whole exchange was done verbally but in front of the department manager, so no worries. After talking to me, he went to a co-worker, Jim, to ask him to also do the same as me. Cool, we agreed, and I clocked out at exactly 10 a.m., 2.5 hours into our shift, and then head out to the parking lot. Jim stayed 2 more hours due to another pending issue. Here comes the first problem. I go out to the parking lot and it's pouring like Jumanji flooded house pouring. I get to my car and it's blocked by many other cars parked in prohibited positions. We were having big issues with this, not enough parking space, and can't get out to head home. I return to the security guard's post to get out of the rain and call Jeff. He doesn't pick up. Was in a meeting, or so he says. So I call my supervisor Brad instead, telling him that I can't leave due to the parking issue. Minutes pass and Brad comes to the parking lot and has a little flash of genius. He sees his car is not blocked and proposes we switch cars and exchange back on Monday. I agree and go on my way back home, somewhat tired, hungry, and soaking from all the rain. Second problem occurs. The day passes and I head back to the factory just in time for the second shift, only to find that rework will start only after 11 p.m. due to some production delays. For me it's cool. I get time to do other pending work. As the hour draws near, the product that needed rework was not ready, nor would it be ready by 11 p.m., so Jim called Jeff, told him the situation, to which he stated, "If you believe beginning of rework delays too much, go home and please come back on Saturday morning." No additional comment was given from us, we just agreed, and he hung up. Jeff was a fan of people following his instructions to the letter, and as you can imagine, this new statement pissed off the both of us, because Jeff was trying to avoid paying overtime for us just waiting idle and not doing this task, even though we had more activities to do anyways. Also, he was very known for having a silver tongue for making promises and getting out of them for petty reasons. Happened to me already. And I also was kind of annoyed because of the parking lot incident that morning. I lost like 45 minutes in the rain just trying to get out. At the moment, I only had 2.5 clocked hours in the morning, and 3 more into the evening, meaning that even though he said those first 2.5 hours were overtime, I knew that wasn't in writing. So the next 5 or so clocked hours of Saturday morning would not be overtime, and if I didn't go, I was going to have the total regular hours needed for that week, and that HR would just deduct them from my overtime hours. At this point, Jim and I looked at each other, and I asked him to repeat what Jeff said on the phone. Cue malicious compliance. Jeff said, "if you believe," meaning that his words gave us free will, and we were going to follow his instructions to the letter. We were told by staff that at midnight rework process would start, and at 10 minutes before midnight, they would procure the people for us to train. We believed this wasn't a big delay, so we rolled the dice. We trained the staff, but product was delayed again. When we asked for the new ETA, it was 1 a.m. That was perfect. Again, we believed it wasn't a big delay. By the second time we asked, the production supervisor got wind of what we were doing and played along. These 30 to 60-minute delays continued until 4 a.m., when finally rework process started. But we only had 20 minutes on shift, to which I remembered the first instruction Jeff said, "Supervise until they finish and stay overtime if needed." So as being the model employees, we complied. Rework was done by 7:10 a.m. Jim took off as soon as we finished. He had worked more hours in the morning. Just as I was sitting to make a report and send it via email per request, Brad arrived for his overtime shift and was pissed off when he learned we didn't go home and started at 4 a.m., and called Jeff to let him know the status of both Jim and I. I explained to Jeff via phone about how we complied exactly how he told us to, and that we were given small delays each time that we didn't believe to be too much. I just told him Jim already left to sleep, but I could stay if he needed me to. Jeff was not vengeful, just a pain to work with, so nothing bad came out of this. He saw that I had outplayed him in his own game, and with his own rules, so he admitted defeat and told me to clock out for the weekend, and don't come in until Monday. I got my normal hours plus 6 extra hours after that whole thing. Bonus, I exchanged back cars with Brad that same Saturday morning instead of Monday, which was nice. Oh, and the rework that was done that Friday night had to be redone again on Sunday because someone unrelated to us messed up, and Jeff had to go himself to supervise because no one was available from our team. 3. This happened around 5 or 6 years ago, when I was still at secondary school in the UK. We had a god-awful textiles teacher who could best be described as Dolores Umbridge. Also, there's a side character of a guy in my class who had a whole host of mental health issues and anger issues. He wasn't really dangerous. The most serious incident he'd had was throwing a chair across a room, but it didn't come anywhere near hitting someone. The guy wouldn't hurt a fly, he just got confused and angry. And because he was normally such a chill person and his outburst was more interesting for the average 14-year-old, he was fairly popular in class. So, a bit of backstory on why everyone hates Umbridge. One day, we're in textiles class and Umbridge is picking on this guy's work for looking like shit. And she's really ripping him a new one, straight laughing at him. I think everyone wanted to knock her out as she went on and on, until the guy suddenly stands up, clenching these little fabric scissors, glaring at his teacher. As I said, this guy wouldn't hurt a fly. Anyone, including teachers, knew he wasn't going to do anything serious. He was more likely to throw them out of the window than stab anyone. But Umbridge decides to practice her kung fu and fucking choke slams the guy into the ground. Cue mass panic. It's really hard to remember what happened right after that. I think we were dismissed for the day, but I don't know. Why wasn't she fired? Who the fuck knows? Some said self-defense, others that the guy had some sort of record, and it was agreed to hush everything up. Point is, this incident was the last straw for most people, me included. So a few weeks of anger management lectures later, and the class was back in the swing of working again. We have an assessment due, something about writing a 2,000-word assignment on African designs or something, and I end up just shy of the deadline to hand in the assignment. And Umbridge, clearly a stickler for the rules, doesn't let me hand in my assignment. It's a bit strange, as the school has a policy where you can redo the assignment and hand it in a few months later to be marked. So why not take the assignment now? At this point, I'm still pissed over the whole choke slamming a kid incident. And then I remembered another school policy. You can have your essay read by the marker before the due date to get feedback. Cue malicious compliance. And so I immediately hand it over to Umbridge, asking her to mark it for feedback. I get the feedback in 2 or 3 days. I rewrite parts of the essay and hand it back for feedback. She must have read the stupid essay 20 times, and towards the end, just starts handing it back with the most petty complaints like, "This isn't orange, it's amber." And somehow, despite fulfilling every recommendation to change the essay, I'm never getting over 80%. I should note, the only subject I couldn't break 80% in was textiles, so after the 20 feedback sheets came through the system, I think the counselor started to get suspicious. And so I get dragged into an office and questioned what the hell was happening. Why do I keep sending in papers to be marked? And I show them the marking. The late real petty shit that had no substance at all. And then we talk, and I put on some waterworks and say how Umbridge wouldn't help me, and that she refused to teach me anything. The counselor looks concerned and goes to fetch the deputy. The deputy looks concerned and gets the head. I'm let off to class where I share my exploits, when they start calling on random people to go to the head office. And suddenly, everyone's working in tandem, each person coming back with more and more sob stories of being neglected by Umbridge. And a few days later, she's gone. She couldn't be fired until the end of the term for some reason, but at least she wasn't teaching. Looking back, it's just so crazy that the school blew off assaulting a student. But when people say they aren't being taught, that's an immediate execution. I absolutely hated that place. Let him out of there. 4. This happened in high school in my senior year, and is my favorite story of being a smartass. We had this teacher, Mr. Shane. He was an older, very strict teacher who came to my rural Midwest town from inner city Chicago. So he thought he could handle just about anything a student threw at him. No one liked Mr. Shane. He was rude, loud, and for him, if you didn't do what he said, it was a one-way ticket to the office. Even the principal got tired of him sometimes. I was a quiet, nerdy metalhead teenager who was on track to graduate early and earn a couple awards from the district. I put forth effort to get along with everyone. My younger brother hated Mr. Shane for many reasons, like reading mine and his IEPs, very confidential stuff normally, in front of class, and managed to get away with it. Needless to say, Mr. Shane was incredibly unpopular. I used to bring a can of Arizona iced tea with me to school because it's dirt cheap and actually pretty tasty. If you've had it, you will understand how good it can be. Mr. Shane had a problem with this because I'm pretty sure if he wasn't asserting his dominance, he thought he wasn't doing his job. I didn't distract people with the tea, but he was fed up with me and my brother calling him out on his stuff, so one day he told me not to bring any more because I didn't bring enough for everyone else. Challenge accepted. The next day I stopped at the grocery store on my way to school and picked up 2 gallons of Arizona iced tea, along with red Solo cups. I let slip to one of my best friends that's also in the class, and he could barely contain his excitement. When time came for class, Mr. Shane walked in and looked smug, up until he saw me giving my classmates Arizona green tea. I even offered him a glass, and he exploded in anger and sent me to the office, before confiscating all my tea and cups. When I told the secretaries, they laughed and sent me in to talk to the vice principal. The vice principal was incredibly amused by my story, and a few minutes later my brother came into the office as well, with the gallons of tea and cups. Apparently Mr. Shane lost it and was ranting to himself for the rest of the school day over disrespectful students. He stopped teaching after that school year, and I like to think I had a hand in that. 5. This story happened when I was a kid. It was New Year's Eve and my family spent the evening with my aunt, her husband, my uncle, and my 3 cousins who were lovable but rambunctious. The sun begins to set and all the kids get excited to light the stockpile of fireworks we had collected. My aunt's family lived in the country, US, so there were very few regulations. My dad cares a lot about safety, which was necessitated by the personalities of all the kids and the mischief we could sometimes get into. However, he has a military background, so instead of emphasizing the basics, we got a detailed spiel that took a good 15 minutes to get through. This safety briefing included how to light the punks, long, slow-burning sticks that can light fireworks, how to safely handle the punks and fireworks themselves, what constitutes someone being in front of a firework when it's shot, the importance of communicating while we're out there handling fireworks, etc. His main rule was that he or another adult had to be outside with us whenever we were lighting the fireworks. At one point we were shooting the small bottle rockets though, and he needed to run inside for a minute. He said we could continue shooting only those and had to continue following all the rules. Well, my cousins and brother didn't do that. My dad catches them mid-act and is furious. I don't remember if they had been firing them towards each other or had begun shooting something that was much bigger than anything else we had shot that night at that point, but it was something along those lines. My dad begins the military style, "Were you born stupid, not following direct orders? Do you even care about the safety of others? Why can't you just listen, your butt is mine, chew out." Those words weren't directly said, but it drives home the point that he was angry. My dad can talk himself into a circle, then beat the same dead horse until it's ground meat, and he did that. Knowing his unique gift, I had slowly walked away and was hanging near the house. My sister was there, and we had decided to do sparklers next. After the initial chew-out, he began micromanaging all shooting of the fireworks. He demanded everyone line up, hold a punk he would hand us, and then he would light them. We were responsible for our own punks, could only handle the punks, and could only light fireworks when he gave the okay. He began handing the punks out. I had been holding a sparkler, but he assumed it was a punk I had already picked up. They looked similar enough. He continues beating that poor dead horse about the situation while he lights each punk. There's a small amount of wind near the house, so he stands with his stomach practically touching the end of the punks and covering the flame from the lighter with his hand. I'm standing at the end of the line, so it's taking some time to get to me. Throughout all of this, I keep trying to tell him that I don't have a punk, and that I don't even want to light any more fireworks that could be lit with a punk. See, I want to light a few sparklers, then go inside where there was good food, and I wouldn't be micromanaged. My sister had already made that move. Each time I try to talk to him, and respectfully, so I might add, he gets increasingly frustrated. But I know that lighting a sparkler while practically touching it cannot end well, and it's worth me trying to communicate this. However, he eventually gets to me. I attempt one more time to tell him I don't have a punk. He snaps. He tells me to stop talking and to just do what he tells me to do. He's going on how it's not that hard to do, and we wouldn't be here if we had all just done that in the first place. This was what we were going to do now, and I just needed to follow his directions. He's angry that I kept interrupting him and, in his mind, talking back. Without saying a word, I stick out my sparkler. He's getting frustrated and confused that it's taking longer to light than the others. Eventually it does light. I don't know how, but that was the biggest ignition of a sparkler I've ever seen. That sucker did justice to the phrase "lit up like the 4th of July." Understandably, he screams in pain and jumps back. He looks at me, who is now holding this bright sparkler to the side with shock. He yells, "Why did you not tell me this wasn't a punk?" And I just stared at him. After a moment I said, "I followed your rules, and I tried to communicate I didn't have a punk. You insisted I stopped talking after I tried to tell you." He stood there dumbfounded, with a huge hole singed in his shirt and a visible burn on his stomach. He has the scar to this day. I had fun with the remainder of the sparkler, then went inside. My family roasted him for what had happened. He admitted he was wrong, and to this day, when I'm trying to explain something about a situation to someone in the family, he points to his stomach and tells me they should listen to me. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 71. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. And I have a little shout out to give to the author of the final story there, the fireworks story. And that goes to Reddit user It's Really a True Story. Somewhat appropriate. Thank you very much, It's Really a True Story, for allowing me to use your story. Okay, I'm going to wrap things up here just now. I might go for a walk later just to get a bit of exercise. We'll see once the video's done how late it is. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.